Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. My mom slammed a grocery bag on the counter and pointed. Keep them in the living room for a minute. Her voice had that edge that meant do not argue. Mia jumped at the noise. Jordan flinched and grabbed my arm. I moved them away from her, already on defense. My name is Alex and I was 17 that week. Old enough to drive, not old enough for whatever this was. Mom's phone rang again and she snatched it up fast. Yeah, I'm leaving today, she muttered, turning her back. I caught that word leaving and pretended I hadn't. She paced while she talked, one hand over her eyes. I told you I handled it, just trust me already. Whoever was on the line made her jaw clench hard. She hung up without goodbye, then looked straight at me. That look felt like a warning, not a normal ask. I need you to watch them for a week. No build-up, no please, just that sentence dropped heavy. I laughed once short because I thought she was joking. A whole week, seriously. She did not laugh back, just tightened her fingers on the counter. You're almost an adult, Alex, you can handle 7 days. I hated how she used that word almost like a weapon. I have school, remember, and shifts in my own stuff. My protest sounded weak even to me, like I was stalling. She watched me, waiting to see if I would fold first. Behind us, Mia tugged my sleeve, whispering about a cartoon. Jordan started drumming on the table with a spoon. They were background noise to her, but center stage to me. I felt them watching both of us, trying to read the room. That made every word feel loaded, like I could crack something. It's just 1 week, she said, softer now, almost sweet. One tiny week and then everything calms down, I swear. I asked what needed calming and she dodged it with a shrug. Bills, work, life, all of it, you don't need the details. Any smart person would have pushed. I swallowed the question instead. She moved to the hallway and yanked a suitcase upright. I had not seen it there earlier, or maybe I had. The zipper strained at the edges like she had stuffed her whole life. For 7 days, slipped out before I could stop myself. She smiled too fast and said business trip, which answered nothing. Mia spotted the suitcase and froze like a scared animal. You're not leaving, right? She asked, voice already shaking. Mom crouched and smoothed her hair, eyes flicking toward the door. I'll be back before you even miss me, promise. That promise felt thin as paper, even in real time. Jordan shoved a toy car into her hand, demanding a race. She pushed it back to him, stood up, and dusted her jeans. No games, buddy, mommy's on a tight schedule today. He frowned and looked at me like I should fix it. I had no idea how to fix anything, not even my own panic. She pulled some cash from her pocket and slapped it down. This covers food for the week, don't go crazy with it. The bills were fewer than I expected, edges worn and soft. I thumbed through them, already calculating, already coming up short. She watched my face carefully, like waiting for me to complain. That's not much, I said, keeping my voice low for the kids. You'll be fine, there's stuff in the freezer, you can stretch it. There was that word again, fine, like a bandage on a fracture. If anything explodes, call your aunt, but only if it's serious. That condition landed weird, like she needed my silence on something. You could just leave us with her instead, I tried once more. My aunt actually liked us, which felt relevant, at least to me. Mom shook her head fast, almost before I finished speaking. She's busy and she worries too much, and I need this clean. That last word stuck in my mind, clean, like she was wiping a slate. Mia climbed onto a chair and wrapped her arms around my neck. Can we go too? She asked, looking between us, hopeful. I felt her heartbeat against me, fast and confused and loud. Mom's eyes glossed for a second, then hardened like a door. You have school, remember, and Alex is in charge, it's decided. I wanted to insist, to drag this out until she cracked. Instead, I nodded like some loyal assistant, playing the stable one. Maybe I liked feeling needed, even while I resented it. Okay, I said, and the word tasted like surrender and fear. Sometimes I think everything after started with that one syllable. She started walking through the rooms, checking drawers and cabinets. Not like she was tidying, more like she was making sure. I trailed behind her, noticing things I had never clocked. The missing photo frame from the shelf, the empty hook by the door. Little gaps that meant something, I just refused to decode them. Charge your phone every night, she said, staring at the outlet. Answer unknown numbers if they call more than once, all right. Her instructions came in bursts, like she rehearsed them in the car. You lock the door after I leave and you watch the time.
League.
Each rule sounded practical, but together they felt like an exit plan. In the kitchen again, she scribbled a number on a receipt. If anything really bad happens, use this before you call anyone. I glanced at the digits, not recognizing the area code at all. Who is it? I asked, but my chest already felt tight. Someone helping me sort stuff out, she said, and that was it. Mia tried to steal the paper, thinking it was a drawing. Mom snatched it back and shoved it into my hand hard. Not a game, she snapped, then softened when Mia's lip trembled. Hey, I'm sorry, you guys are my whole world, you know that. If we were her world, I could not understand why it felt like goodbye. She finally stood still in front of me, just studying my face. You're tougher than you think, Alex, you always have been. Her hands landed on my shoulders, too heavy for comfort. I smelled anxiety on her, not perfume, something sharp and restless. I need you to hold it together no matter what you hear. What would I hear? I asked, brain immediately jumping to worst. She opened her mouth, closed it, and shook her head once. Grown-up stuff, none of your business, keep the kids steady. That answer burned because everything already felt like my business. She squeezed my shoulders again, like that could glue me in place. I walked her to the door with Mia glued to her side. Jordan dragged his small backpack, insisting he was coming too. She kissed their foreheads quick, almost like she was on camera. When she hugged me, she held on longer, fingers digging in. I told myself that meant she would come back, not that she was saying goodbye. Outside, the trunk of her car was already packed to the top. I noticed a box with our last name written in thick marker. There were more bags than any simple work trip really needed. Why so much stuff? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Laundry, she answered, which was such a lazy lie that I swallowed my anger. Mia banged on the car door, begging to ride around the block. Next time, Mom said, sliding into the driver's seat, eyes on the road. Jordan held my wrist, pressing his toy car into my palm. You keep this safe, he whispered like we were trading secrets. I nodded because I could not promise him anything real. The engine turned over and my stomach rolled with it. She waved once through the window, barely looking at us. I lifted my hand, more reflex than belief, more habit than trust. The car pulled away from the curb, slow at first, then faster. I watched until the taillights disappeared, still pretending a week meant a week. On the 8th morning, my phone buzzed across the floor. Mia crashed into my side before I could grab it. Is that her? She stabbed the answer button before I reacted. The screen flashed unknown caller and my stomach pulled tight. I yanked it from her hand and let it ring out. At that point, I treated strange numbers like landmines under us. If it was her, she would use her own contact, and that was my logic. Mia stared at me, then at the dark screen on the blanket. Why do you keep letting it die? Her voice scraped the air. I muttered something about bad service and hoped she swallowed it. Jordan shuffled in, clutching his toy car against his chest. Is Mom back today? He climbed into my lap without waiting. I checked the date and watched the number punch me again. Yeah, today, I answered too fast and I felt my face heat. The promise hung between us like steam from something burning. Breakfast turned into damage control, the second cereal ran low. I split the last bowl between them and pretended I was full. Mia noticed and scooped half her share into my spoon. Take it or I'm telling her you starved me, she warned. I swallowed it and laughed, but the taste felt like guilt. While they argued about cartoons, I opened her message thread. Her last text was some quick heart emoji from days earlier. I hit call and listened to it ring and ring into nothing. No voicemail greeting, just endless ringing, then the line cut. I called again because repeating it felt better than doing nothing. By midday, they were dressed and parked by the front door. Mia kept peeking through the gap and counting passing cars. Jordan lined his toy vehicles in a row pointed toward the street. First one is hers, he decided, and tapped the smallest one. I nodded along and forced myself not to check the time. The first knock slammed through the place just after lunch. Both of them jumped up yelling her name before I could move. I opened the door halfway and found our landlord filling the frame. He held an envelope and a fake polite smile that never reached his eyes. Give this to your mother, he said and looked over my shoulder. I slid my body sideways so he could not see the living room. She's out right now, I answered, and my palms felt wet. He pressed the envelope into my hand and tapped it once. Rent's late again, he said in high. S tone carried a warning. I shut the door and leaned against it until my breathing slowed. Mia trotted over, reaching for the paper with sticky fingers. Is that from Mom? She tried to pry my hand open. It's boring adult stuff, I told her and tucked it into my pocket. I knew she would remember that pocket and probably check later. The thought of her reading that notice made my chest ache. I locked myself in the bathroom to open the envelope. The numbers on the page glared up way bigger than our cash. There was a deadline stamped across the bottom in heavy print. I folded it small enough to feel dangerous and hid it in my shoe. Even now, I remember the weight of that paper under my heel. Food became a math problem I kept losing in my head. I measured pasta with my palm and skipped seconds without comment. They complained once and I joked about my secret diet experiment. Celebrities do this, I told them and waved a spoon like a wand. They laughed, but I caught Mia watching me chew too slowly. School did not pause just because my world felt suspended. I packed them into the carpool line and pretended we were normal. Tell her to sign my permission slip, Mia reminded me before running off. I smiled and gave a thumbs up like I had it handled. The second she vanished, my stomach twisted around that slip. In homeroom, my own teacher slid a note onto my desk. Office wants to confirm something with your mother, she murmured. The paper mentioned missing emergency contact forms and attendance calls. I stared at the words until they blurred into one long accusation. I signed her name at the bottom and prayed nobody checked closely. When we got back that afternoon, the mailbox gaped open. A pile of letters waited like tiny problems lined in a row. Utility bill, another envelope from the landlord, something from a bank. I grabbed everything before the little one saw and shoved it inside my backpack. Every new piece of mail felt like proof she should already be here. That evening turned into a countdown we never agreed on. Mia sat cross-legged by the door with her backpack still on. Jordan parked his cars facing the driveway, ready for some grand arrival. I paced between the kitchen and the window and pretended to tidy. Each pair of headlights that passed painted hope across their faces. When another unknown number flashed on my screen, my heart lurched. I stepped onto the tiny porch so they could not hear. Hello, I answered and bit the inside of my cheek hard. A recorded voice started talking about overdue something and payment options. I hung up and deleted the call history before re-entering the room. Was that her? Mia squinted at me from the hallway floor. She's busy right now, I tossed back and avoided her eyes. Jordan yawned so wide his whole body shook with it. Can we stay up till she gets here? He mumbled into my sleeve. I told him sure, even though the clock already felt cruel. 9 o'clock crawled past and the door stayed shut. Mia's chin dropped to her chest while she guarded the threshold. I lifted her in my arms and she startled awake midair. Put me down, what if she knocks? She protested and kicked lightly. I laid her on the couch and promised to listen extra carefully. Jordan finally toppled over on his blanket fortress near the entry. His hand stayed wrapped around that tiny car he had trusted me with. I covered him and switched off the television to save power. Silence filled the room, louder than any show we had watched. I sat by the door myself, feeling more like a guard than a brother. My phone lay on the floor between my feet, lighting up the ceiling. I opened our chat again and hovered over the call button. If she answered, I planned to yell, then beg, then yell again. I dialed and listened to the ringing wrap around the room. No one picked up and the sound just stopped like a cut rope. I tried once more because quitting felt worse than this hold music. It rang fewer times, like the network itself had lost patience. This time it dumped straight to a mailbox already too full. Her voice never played, there was only a flat system message. I stared at the screen and whispered that she was just busy. Looking back, that night should have cleared everything up for me. The late rent, the calls, the silence after the promise of return. Any reasonable person would have called another adult or even the police. Instead, I tucked the phone under my pillow and chose denial. I decided she was delayed, not gone, and that decision changed everything. The power cut out while Mia practiced spelling on the floor. Her pencil stopped mid-word and she looked straight at me. Jordan yelled from the hallway that the television died again. I checked the breaker even though I already knew the answer. Through the window, every other apartment glowed like normal Friday night. Ours stayed dark, which told me exactly whose fault this blackout was. I pulled the crumpled bill from my backpack and unfolded it slowly. The due date had passed days earlier and I had done nothing. I dialed the number at the bottom and held my breath. A cheerful automated voice welcomed me and asked for the account holder. When a real person finally picked up, they asked to speak with my mother. I straightened my shoulders and said she was not available right now. They wanted a payment that would empty the cash left on the counter. I offered half and hoped my voice sounded older than it was. The agent repeated policy in a flat tone, then suggested calling a parent instead. I hung up before I started crying because they could not see me anyway. 30 minutes later, someone pounded on the door hard enough to rattle it. Mia rushed over with wide eyes, whispering that it had to be her. Jordan grabbed my leg and pressed his favorite car into my ankle. I opened the door a crack and found our neighbor holding a flashlight. She peered past me and took in the dark living room and silent kitchen. Her mouth tightened like she was biting back every question spinning in there. Power out again, she lifted the flashlight slightly and scanned the ceiling. I shrugged and blamed some big storm I pretended had passed earlier. She did not look convinced but stepped inside far enough to see the kids. Mia waved without standing like she was afraid to lose her post by the door. Jordan shielded his car behind his back like this stranger might confiscate it. No grown-ups here tonight. The neighbor's voice softened a little but still felt sharp. I told her our mom was working late and we were just conserving electricity. She gave me that look adults use when they know you are lying. Need anything? She held the flashlight out like an offering and I grabbed it fast. Come knock if this place gets too weird, all right. Her eyes lingered on the empty hallway. After she left, Mia finally asked out loud what we both knew. They shut it off because you did not pay that envelope thing right. I crouched to her level and promised everything would flicker back on tomorrow. That promise tasted bitter even as I spoke it into the dark. We slept in the same room that night with the flashlight between us. I kept my phone charging from the neighbor's extension cord through the cracked window. Every buzz made my heart jump until I checked and saw only more automated warnings. I ignored them all and kept hoping one ring would actually be her. By the third week, my calls stopped even reaching the full mailbox recording. Instead, a robotic voice informed me the number was no longer in service. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and my reflection stared back. I redialed out of habit and got the same message like a slap. After that, I tried the mystery contact she had scribbled for emergencies. 2 rings and a man answered and called me by her first name. My throat locked so tight I could barely force any sound out. Wrong number, sorry. I hung up before he could push more questions at me. Later that day, I dragged our trash outside with Jordan trailing behind me. Mrs. Clark watered her plants and watched us over the porch railing. You kids still here? She sounded surprised, which landed like a punch to my ribs. I tossed the bag into the bin and pretended not to understand. Thought your mom moved already. I saw her loading boxes the other night. She laughed a little after she spoke like it was some casual detail. My hands went numb, though I kept my face boring and blank. When, the word slipped out alone before I could control which thoughts escaped. Week before she disappeared, Mrs. Clark twisted the hose and looked away from me. Whole car packed up top to bottom. I figured you were going too. She shook her head once like she did not love that memory either. You must have been asleep. Her eyes slid to Jordan and softened again. I heard myself laugh and it sounded completely wrong in the quiet yard. Yeah, I was out cold, I joked and wiped my palms on my jeans. Inside my head, I replayed her trunk stuffed with bags as she drove off. None of that looked like a temporary trip anymore, and I knew it. Jordan tugged my sleeve and asked if he could ride his bike. I told him sure and watched him circle the parking lot without seeing anything. Mrs. Clark kept glancing over like she was waiting for me to break down. I gave her a quick wave and marched inside before my legs failed. Back in the hallway, I pulled out the shut-off notice and overdue warnings. All of them had her name printed across the top while I handled them alone. For the first time, I pictured her signing something somewhere far from us. I wanted to believe that paper trail eventually led back home to this hallway. Even now, I remember how stubborn I felt in that moment. If I admitted she packed up on purpose, then the whole story shifted. So I stuck with the version where she got stuck somewhere and could not call. Deep down, look, I had her voice whispered that she had actually chosen away from us. Someone hammered on the door hard enough to shake the frame. Mia jumped so high her notebook flew across the floor. Jordan ran toward the hallway yelling that it had to be her. My hands already knew it was not her before my brain admitted it. I blocked Jordan with my arm before he could grab the knob. "Stay back please, just in case," I told him without looking away. The person on the other side knocked again, slower but somehow heavier. I opened the door just enough to see a man with a badge. He held the badge at eye level like he had done this 1,000 times. "You must be Alex," his voice was calm but there was zero warmth. I nodded because my throat locked again at the sound of my name. He shifted his clipboard and checked some note before meeting my eyes again. "Is your mother home right now?" He glanced past my shoulder into the living room. I stepped deeper into the doorway until my body filled most of the gap. "She is at work," I answered while forcing the words out like they were stuck. He studied me so long I felt myself start to fidget against the frame. "I'm Mr. Carter with Child Protective Services." He lifted the badge again, slower. Mia whispered my name from somewhere behind my back and the man's gaze followed. "I got a call requesting a welfare check on this residence." He read from the clipboard. Hearing those words made the hairs on my arms prick like I was outside in winter. I tried to laugh it off and ended up coughing instead, which did not help. "We're fine, someone probably overreacted," I finally managed while gripping the edge of the door. He looked past me again, counting heads in the background without even moving closer. "May I come inside for a moment?" His tone stayed even but there was no question in it. Letting him in felt like choosing a side, but refusing was worse. I opened the door wider and motioned for Mia to join Jordan near the couch. They stared at the visitor while huddling closer together, unsure where to put their hands. Mr. Carter stepped inside and closed the door gently behind him with one careful push. He introduced himself to them, using their names like he had practiced them in the car. "Can you tell me where your mom is today?" He kept his eyes on the kids, not me. "At work," Mia answered and then glanced sideways at me for confirmation. "How long has she been gone?" His voice dropped a notch and I felt my ribs tighten. My brain flipped through numbers and landed nowhere, so I just picked one. "A couple weeks maybe," I murmured while wishing I had shut up sooner. Mia frowned and opened her mouth, closing it again when I shook my head slightly. Jordan climbed into my lap without asking and buried his face against my shirt. Mr. Carter studied us for a long few seconds, then checked another page on the clipboard. "Your landlord contacted our office," he explained while adjusting his glasses up the bridge of his nose. He pulled a folded document from a plastic folder and handed it across the small space. "Do you maybe recognize this document?" He tapped the top line where my mother's full name was printed. It was a copy of our lease with a fresh page attached announcing early termination. Next to that notice, they had circled a move-out date that had already passed. Underneath was a line showing the deposit mailed to a forwarding address I did not recognize. My stomach dipped like an elevator, and I gripped Jordan a little too tight for comfort. "This form is signed by your mother," he pointed with the end of his pen. The signature matched every note she had ever shoved onto the fridge, same tilt. She told the management she vacated the unit already and left no mention of children. Hearing those words out loud made something crack in my chest that I could not tape. For a second I wanted to argue the paper was fake, that someone forged her name. Instead I heard myself insisting she would never just disappear and leave us like that. Mr. Carter listened without interrupting, watching my face while my voice kept climbing higher. "If she contacts you, you call me immediately," he said while holding up his business card. Mia finally spoke up from the couch, hugging her knees like they might float away. "She didn't leave us," she argued with her chin shaking as she dared him to contradict her. Jordan twisted in my lap and glared at the stranger with sudden fierce loyalty. Watching them defend someone who vanished hurt worse than anything he held in his folder. Mr. Carter sat on the edge of a chair, careful not to crowd us too much. "I'm not here to blame you," he assured while directing that line straight at me. "My concern is that you are minors alone with utilities being shut off and no guardian contact." Hearing the word "alone" from an official mouth made the room feel suddenly too small to breathe. He asked if there were any relatives nearby, anyone we "I'd stay with temporarily." I mentioned my aunt's name and watched him write it carefully along with a number. Giving that information felt like betraying my mother and saving us at the same time. "If she cannot be located, we may contact your aunt," he explained while underlining the name. He walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator door without asking for permission. There was more empty space than actual food, and I saw his eyebrows lift slightly. "You feeding them 3 times a day?" he asked while keeping his tone neutral on purpose. "Yeah," I answered quickly and rushed to explain we had a plan for groceries tomorrow. He nodded once and closed the door again, but I could tell he was logging every detail. "I'm opening a case, which means I'll be checking on you again very soon." He tore off a sheet from his pad and wrote the word urgent in the top corner. "If you wake up tomorrow and she is still gone, you call this number first." When he finally stepped back toward the entrance, my legs felt strangely unstable beneath me. He shook my hand like I was another adult and pressed his card into my palm. "I'll check in with your aunt either way," he added and gave me one last measured look. Then he opened the door and left us standing there with the quiet buzzing in our ears. As soon as it shut, Mia rounded on me, eyes bright with panic and disbelief. "Are we getting taken away?" she demanded while clutching her backpack like luggage. Jordan pressed himself against my side and started chewing his thumbnail again. I told them nobody was taking them anywhere, even though my voice did not sound sure. After they wandered back to their homework, I unfolded the card he had given me. Under his printed name, someone had scribbled a note in smaller, rushed handwriting. It read "Possible abandonment investigation pending," with our address underlined so hard the paper dented. That was the first time I understood the state had a word for what she did. I slid the card into my pocket and left my hand there, pressing it flat against my leg. Part of me wanted to tear it up and pretend he had never come. Another part wanted to dial that number right then and force this whole thing to collapse. Instead, I stood frozen in the hallway between those two choices, listening for footsteps that still never returned. The phone rang while Mia poured cereal straight from the box. She froze with it halfway tipped, eyes locked on the screen. Jordan whispered that maybe it was that man coming to grab us. I let it ring twice before I forced myself to pick up. "Alex," the voice came through steady and low. It was Mr. Carter, using my name like we had some routine. "We still haven't reached your mother, and your aunt agreed to help." He paused long enough for my stomach to flip in slow motion. "I need you to pack some things for you and your brother and sister." The spoon slipped from Mia's hand and clattered against the table. "Are we leaving today?" She stared at me, not the phone. Jordan dragged his bowl closer, listening like the cereal might answer first. I turned my face away from them and pressed the phone closer. "How long?" I asked, my voice sounding strangely calm in my own ear. "Until we sort placement," he replied, papers rustling faintly in the background. "Your aunt is on her way, I'll meet you there." Placement, that word made everything sound temporary and permanent at the same time. "I need a little time," I said, staring at the wall. "You've got an hour," he answered, then the line clicked quiet. I hung up and every eye in the kitchen landed on me at once. "Was that her?" Mia whispered, still holding the box in midair. Jordan watched my face like he could read a secret message there. "No," I said, which was true, then the harder part came next. "We have to stay with Aunt Lisa for a bit." Mia slammed the cereal down so hard some pieces bounced off the table. "She thinks Mom left, that's why they're doing this, right?" I opened my mouth and nothing useful came out for several seconds. Jordan slid off his chair and wrapped both arms around my waist. "We're coming back though?" he asked, eyes shining, waiting for an anchor. "Yeah," I answered automatically because saying anything else would wreck him. "Grab a bag, take clothes, school stuff, your one favorite thing." My voice took on this brisk tone I did not recognize as mine. They scattered to their rooms, suddenly busy, suddenly older. I stood there alone for a second, shaking harder than any of them. In my room, I stared at the closet and felt my brain stall. Whatever I picked meant I was admitting this wasn't just a weird weekend. I stuffed clothes in without folding, then dug out the envelope of unpaid bills. They went into the side pocket, loud and thin, like evidence I couldn't leave behind. Mr. Carter's card slipped in after them, the edges scratching my fingers. Mia appeared in the doorway with 2 backpacks instead of one. "I packed his stuff because he keeps putting only cars in his," she explained. Behind her, Jordan clutched a plastic bag filled with tiny vehicles and one crumpled drawing. "Did I do it wrong?" he asked, ready to defend his choices. "No," I told him, "you did it exactly right, because I couldn't take that away too." We lined our bags by the front door like we were checking into somewhere. The apartment looked the same on the surface, but everything underneath shifted. Mia kept rearranging her zipper, opening and closing it, checking nothing had vanished. Jordan sprawled on the floor beside his bag, quietly rolling one car back and forth. Every sound felt louder, like the walls were listening to see if we cracked. When the knock finally came, it was softer than I expected. Mia beat me there and yanked the door before I could reach it. My aunt stood on the step with her keys still in her hand. Her eyes skipped over me and went straight to the kids first. Then she spotted the bags and her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Hey," she breathed, dropping to her knees so she was level with them. "You're coming with me for a while, all right." Mia searched her face like she was trying to catch dishonesty in her expression. "Is Mom at your place?" she asked, small but direct. My aunt swallowed hard, then looked at me over their heads for backup. I stepped behind them and answered before she could try something gentle. "Mom's not there," I said, feeling every word land on the floor. A tiny sound escaped me, a half sigh, half protest, then silence. Jordan pressed closer to my leg until it almost hurt. My aunt rose slowly, like standing up cost something. Mr. Carter arrived a few minutes later with another folder under his arm. He checked off our names on a form while we stood in a crooked line. "You have their birth certificates, school contacts, anything like that?" he asked. I held up the bulging side pocket of my bag like it was a trophy. He nodded and marked another box, businesslike, eyes doing that constant scan again. When we walked out, I locked the door even though it felt pointless. For a second, I imagined her car suddenly whipping into the lot. She would shout about mixed-up paperwork and take us home and fix everything. Nothing moved except a trash bag flapping on the dumpster. Mia kept glancing back over her shoulder until the building disappeared. The drive to my aunt's place stretched way longer than it actually was. Jordan fell asleep halfway, hands still wrapped around one toy tightly. Mia stayed awake and rigid, staring straight ahead like a little soldier. My aunt gripped the wheel hard, knuckles pale, trying to look calm. I stared out my window and counted how many turns it took to get there. At the house, my aunt ushered the kids inside with forced cheer. "Pick any bunk you want," she told them and clapped her hands once. They rushed down the hall more out of habit than excitement. When they were out of earshot, she rounded on me fast. "Why didn't you call me the second she disappeared?" her voice sharp but shaking. I pulled the overdue notices and the lease copy from my bag. Spread them across her kitchen table like a lousy hand of cards. "She said 1 week," I answered, which sounded even weaker out loud. My aunt read every page, jaw tight, eyes tracing each line. When she finished, she pushed the papers away like they burned. "Carter thinks this is abandonment, maybe longer planning," she said quietly. Hearing that from family hit differently than hearing it from a worker. "I thought she'd come back," I told her, anger and shame wrestling inside me. "You were a kid trying to plug a dam with your hands," she replied. That sentence almost undid me more than anything my mother had done. The next few weeks passed in ugly little jumps instead of smooth days. New school forms, questions from counselors, check-ins from Mr. Carter where he counted our heads again. Every visit ended with the same update. "No contact yet." Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. I nearly ignored it out of habit, then something pulled my hand back. I swiped and lifted it, heart suddenly sprinting ahead of me. "Hello," my voice cracked on the second syllable like it wasn't ready. "Hey baby, it's me," came through in a bright chirp like nothing had happened. I went absolutely blank for a full second, like someone hit mute inside my skull. "Where are you?" I asked, no hello, no warm-up. "Oh my God, I've been through so much, you wouldn't believe it," she rushed out. She launched into some story about losing her phone and health problems. Her sentences skipped right over the part where she left us on purpose. I let her talk long enough to prove she still could. Then I cut through it with the one thing stuck in my brain. "You signed the lease," I said, words flat, no question mark needed. Silence slammed down on the line so fast I thought we disc. "Connected." Then she laughed once short like I had told a bad joke. "Adults do paperwork all the time, you don't understand how this works," she replied. "That copy says you moved out alone," I shot back before I could stop. "You've been listening to people who hate me," she snapped, voice flipping sharp. My hand trembled, phone slick with sweat, but I did not hang up. Some part of me needed to hear every excuse straight from her mouth. In the doorway my aunt appeared, arms folded, eyes asking a simple question. I mouthed her name and watched my aunt's shoulders stiffen instantly. "She took you," my mother continued, her tone now full wounded and accusing. She's always wanted you kids, she's trying to turn you against me. Hearing her twist things like that made something cold settle in my chest. She took us because you vanished, I answered, words coming sharper than before. You told the building you were gone and never mentioned your own kids. My mother inhaled like I had slapped her, then launched into another sprint. You're ungrateful, you don't know what I sacrificed, you'll see when you're older. That line finally did it for me, more than any signature ever could. I was there, I said, voice low now, steady in a new way. I watched the power shut off, I fed them with nothing, I answered the knocks. For a second she had no comeback, just breathing on the other side. Put my babies on, she demanded suddenly, like everything before was warm up. My aunt stepped into the frame and shook her head firmly, lips pressed thin. They're doing homework, I told her, which was true enough. We can set something up with Carter if you really want to see them. She exploded at that, curses pouring out, calling me dramatic and brainwashed. You're seriously involving strangers in our private business, she shouted through the speaker. I held the phone away, listening to my aunt's quiet breathing beside me. When she ran out of energy, she switched tactics so fast it made me dizzy. Look, I'm getting my life together, I just need a little time, she coaxed. I miss you all so much, send pictures, let me come by the house. She talked about visits and birthday parties like we were just in a small fight. None of it included apologies, just requests and future plans with her at the center. I told her I'd think about it and hung up before she could grip me again. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone on the tile. My aunt took it gently from me and set it on the counter. You don't owe her immediate forgiveness, she said, eyes never leaving my face. Loving her and protecting your siblings are not the same thing. Over the next month, my mother sent messages like little grenades. Long paragraphs about how lonely she was, little heart emojis mixed with blame. Sometimes she talked like a victim, other times like a coach calling me weak. I blocked the number one night after a bad one, then unblocked it the next day. That back and forth became its own awful routine, like picking at a scab. Mia figured it out before I admitted anything out loud. You keep checking your phone after dinner, she pointed out, watching me. Is that her? Is she texting you and not us? The hurt in her voice cut deeper than anything my mother had thrown. I showed her the screen and let her read exactly what was there. She scrolled in silence, absorbing the guilt trips and the sudden sweet lines. She's acting like she just missed a couple school plays, Mia muttered. Jordan peeked over her shoulder, catching more than I wanted him to. Does she still love us? He asked, eyes huge, begging for one clear answer. I could not say no, but yes felt like betrayal of reality. That night I sat on my aunt's couch with the phone in my lap. Notifications glowed, each one from the same contact, demanding a reaction. I opened our thread again and watched my own short replies stacked under her speeches. Every message from me looked like someone trying to negotiate with a storm. I realized I was more scared of upsetting her than of what she already did. So I typed one last thing, slower than anything I had ever written. I need space for a while, I'll reach out if that changes. My thumb hovered over send long enough to make my chest ache. I hit it, watched the bubble deliver, then opened the settings. This time when I blocked the number, I left it that way. Now I'm sitting here months later, kids asleep down the hall. They argue over normal stuff again, teachers and games, not missing parents. My aunt drinks her coffee and reminds me to schedule my own therapy sessions. And my phone stays quiet except for school group chats and dumb memes. Still, I keep wondering if cutting my own mother off makes me cruel or just finally done.